The idea of these always heard advocacy seminars now in the fourth year is to bring together advocates and young people and other children's rights champions to look at advocacy issues and trying to bring about change, not just in our practice, but also into the wider sector. In past years, we looked at important subjects such as the importance of independence in advocacy, creating connections and communicating with young people and some of the challenges and overcoming challenges around that. This year's theme is A Voice for All, supporting children and young people who have missed out on advocacy. And we'll be looking at some of the children and young people who receive or should receive support from children's services, but who too often miss out on advocacy. This can be because they've not got a statutory right, or their entitlement is not clear or is being overlooked. From the work of Always Heard and the Coram Voice specialist advocacy projects, we know that this matters, and I'm sure you've probably come across this as well. Children and young people are missing out on advocacy that could help them overcome serious life-changing challenges. We've got a really fantastic panel this afternoon, and they're here to share their lived experience and their expertise, and I really look forward to introducing them as we go through the seminar. We also want to hear from you. This is a seminar that's filled with advocates, children's rights champions, young people. You're also experts, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes from the group discussions that we'll have after the panel presentations. Before we move to hearing from our panel, I want to speak briefly about the work of Always Heard and the work we've done over the last year. We've shared our report along with the invitation, and that report's also on our website if you want to take a look at that. I think it's a real testament to the dedication of the Always Heard team that they've again delivered so much support to so many young people in the last year. I think we all know the challenges that this service and others and all of you across the country have faced with COVID, increasing demand and the complexity of issues that young people are bringing to us. The risk of burnout and pressure on services, and the challenge of maintaining and recruiting to teams. So I really want to say a big thank you to Charlotte Hancock and the Always Heard Helpline team for their efforts, as well as the safety net advocates across the country who've been delivering some vital support. I think most of you will be now familiar with the purpose of Always Heard, but I do want to give a brief summary. We were commissioned as a national advice and advocacy helplines and safety net service in 2017. And this built on the work of Coram Voice had done historically to provide a national advocacy helpline. The service is for children in care and care leavers, and also for some children and young people on the edges of care. We'll look at that in a bit more detail shortly. Key parts of it are a single point of access for any young person to access advocacy, the safety net for young people who are unable to access advocacy, and then the third aspect of it is trying to fix the problems of systemic barriers to advocacy. And it's a service that really makes a difference to children and young people. So looking at the single point of access, we maintain details of every local authority, every local advocacy service in all of the 152 local authorities in England. We make sure that children and young people can access that. So we use that database to make referrals and also to signpost young people to their local services. And we did that 9,000 times last year. And that help can include an advocate on our helpline supporting young people to overcome initial barriers, like a lack of interpreters, or a lack of response to initial asks for help. The other really important aspect of the service is the safety net, and that's where we provide our advocacy guarantee. So any child or young person contacting Always Heard will have advocacy support. Most of that will be through local advocacy services, but if they are unable to help a young person, then we'll provide the advocacy. And we helped 700 young people in that way last year. And that ranged from urgent and work such as supporting a young person to make an urgent complaint, to stop an unwanted move, through to helping a child at risk of a homeless child at risk of spending a night in the street or in a stranger's home, through to long and extended complex cases trying to establish a care leaver's rights and entitlements. In each of those cases, young people felt they had no advocacy options until they reached Always Heard. And the final part, as I mentioned before, fixing the problem. So we work with local authorities and Ofsted, the Department for Education, and also alongside Help at Hand service from the Children's Commissioner. We share the experience of young people that they have of the barriers to advocacy that they experience. And we let directors of children's services know that their young people are being denied the support they're entitled to. And we see the impact of this work in many ways. So we've seen in some instances increased funding for local services as a consequence of our interventions. We've seen the urgent commissioning of advocacy services where local authorities have a gap or a pause services. And we've also seen widened eligibility criteria. So there are care leavers now who are able to access advocacy in their local services that weren't able to do that before. So real concrete improvements. We also share young people's stories with the Department for Education, keeping them informed about how advocacy is provided across the country, and I hope influencing their decisions about influencing their decision making and also informing their approach. And you'll also see on page 12 of the report that we share our data with Ofsted. That means that Ofsted inspectors have access to the information we have on barriers to advocacy in every local authority in the country, and also have the data around about our concerns we've had through our work about social care practice. So for example, where a homeless child has been described and treated by social workers as intentionally homeless, that's shared with Ofsted, or where serious safeguarding concerns have not been acted on as they should have been, that's shared with Ofsted. And I hope that will be really useful in terms of Ofsted when you're making inspections, hearing what young people's experience of services has been. The more work that we do, the more we find out about barriers to advocacy, and that's detailed from page 8 in the report. But I did want to share that there is some room for optimism. I think our work on challenging barriers to care leavers has impacted, whereas we saw barriers to care leavers accessing advocacy of about 28% in 2020. In 2021, we saw it reduced to 14%. So it's real progress. We have seen less restrictive gatekeeping to care leavers and less arbitrary cutoff dates of 19 or 21 and give that's reasons for denying care leavers advocacy. There's less instances of barriers such as young people not being able to access advocacy outside of the local authority, or being unable to access urgent support, or not being able to access interpreters. So again, some progress in some key areas. However, it can't be right that care leavers in at least 14% of local authorities have faced limited or no access to advocacy. It can't be right that 12% of local authorities can't instruct non-instructed advocacy. And it really can't be right that young people who need to speak with their advocate with an interpreter are unable or struggle to get one in over a quarter of local authorities. So still very much work to be done. I want to spend the rest of my time looking at what Always Heard does with children and young people who are not looked after or not leaving care. We can't help everybody. We can't support children in child protection, in the child protection process, or children in need who are not seeking to be taken into care. However, we are able to support homeless children seeking support from children's services if the local service is unable to help. And we think about 70% of local authorities don't provide this advocacy support, so it's very much needed. We're also able to provide safety net support to children who've come to this country as refugees, but have been assessed to be adults. And from the start, we've recognised that children in this group are particularly vulnerable. They're outside of the social care system because they're deemed to be adult, and they're unable to access support to challenge that because they're deemed to be adults. We thought this would be a small number of children, but over the last year, sadly, we've worked with an increasing number of children who've been incorrectly assessed to be adults. We've helped 30 children who've come to the UK to seek protection, only to find that they were disbelieved about their age and placed in adult accommodation by Home Office officials. Some children were detained as if they were adults. These children described being distressed and confused about what's happening when they first contact Always Heard. Without help, these children are left unsafe and unsupported. However, few local advocacy services are in a position to offer support to these children. It's telling that about 80% of the children we worked with on this issue have successfully challenged their age assessment and have been provided with support from children's services. And that's children like Awet, whose story we share in the report at page 13. He was a 17-year-old refugee. He was sent to a hotel while his asylum claim was processed. Hotel staff were so concerned about how he was presenting as a traumatized and distressed child that they helped Awet to get in touch with us. He told us he'd come to the UK without his family and been detained by the Home Office. He told the Home Office officials that he was 17, but he didn't have any papers to prove that, and they did not believe him. They said he was clearly over 25. He wasn't assessed by social workers or children's services, and he was sent to a hotel in the Midlands, which was being used to accommodate adult asylum seekers. Awit told us he couldn't sleep because he was scared of some of the adults in the hotel. He said he was sad and cried a lot. No one would talk to him. He couldn't see the point of life anymore. This was a child at the very lowest ebb. Our helpline advocate reassured Awit that we would help him. He agreed that we could make a safeguarding alert and asked for him to be looked after while a proper assessment was made of his care needs. As he was found to be an adult, and the system saw him as an adult, he wasn't eligible for advocacy support from his local advocacy service, so we provided the support under the safety net. So our safety net advocate worked side by side with Awit, making sure his voice was heard. And it took a lot of persistent advocacy, and after helping him access legal support, Children's Services took action to safeguard him. He was taken out of the hotel, placed with other young people his own age. His age and needs were assessed by Children's Services, and he was taken into care. He's now at college, and he's getting the support he needs from his social worker, and he feels much safer and more secure. So I think it's, sharing that, it's frankly outrageous that traumatized children and vulnerable children like Awit, who come to this country seeking protection, are being treated in this way. I imagine being separated from your family, being forced to leave your home country, having experienced danger and mistreatment traveling to UK, and then you find yourself disbelieved about who you are and how old you are when you thought you were coming to safety. So that's why I'm delighted that Keely will be joining us to look at this area in some more detail. Always Heard will continue to work on this issue and highlight the injustices that young refugees are facing. And will continue to help children and young people overcome the barriers to advocacy they face and work to fix this problem. The next up, I want to introduce you to Keely Creedy, who's a head of community care law at Coram Children's Legal Centre. As I mentioned earlier, there is a problem of refugee children being wrongly assessed to be adults and experiencing what is really a major assault on their rights by missing out on social care support that they need. And they're also locked out of advocacy as well. So Keely is going to share some legal perspectives on this issue and describe what young people, advocates and others can do to address that. So over to you, Keely, if I can.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Yeah. I'm Keely. I'm head of the community care team at Coram CLC. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and contribute today. I think I probably have spoken with or recognised quite a few names of those that are here, but there's probably quite a few new faces as well. And just to say, I actually have COVID at the moment, so I will also need to apologise if I start having a coughing fit or need to take water. Hopefully I won't be too bad today. So yeah, age assessments is quite a wide topic and quite a meaty one. So I'm going to try and keep it sort of as relevant as I hope for you guys, and keep it to the type of things that you're likely to come across and the sort of things that may be helpful. I think for a fair few of you, particularly those linked with Always Heard, Andrew's obviously said about the number of young people you've already helped in this sort of scenario. And the 80% success rate is quite astonishing, and I think quite reflective of how the process on age is very much broken one. But I will start with a bit of context and sort of how the sort of age issue arises. So mostly it's in relation to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, so children who arrive in the UK on their own without family, and often without ID or proof of age, or ID and a proof of age that's viewed to be reliable by the Home Office. And age is a decision that's made at the point they come to the attention of one of the UK authorities, which quite often is the Home Office at the point they claim asylum. They are usually arriving by boat, by plane, back of lorries. So that usually determines at what point they come to the attention of the authorities and when the age assessment happens. But also age can arise with young people who have been in care for quite a while, and suddenly a concern about age comes up, and it's a decision that's then made to do an age assessment. The majority of cases, I think, Always Heard particularly have been dealing with are about young people who have been assessed to be adults rather than children. But just to say, there's quite a number of cases where a young person is accepted they're a child, but just not as young as they claim to be. So we often see, a young person who claims to be 14 but are determined to be 16. So yes, they get into social services, care and support, but obviously that support is not in line with what their claimed age is. So again, another important factor and reason to look to see if it can be challenged. There's also situations where young people just don't know their age, don't know their date of birth, or it's quite clearly established that what they think they might think is their age possibly isn't. So they can kind of arise, and they're very case specific in terms of how they then play out in terms of a challenge. But I think understanding why it's an important factor, and I know you've touched on this already, Andrew, in terms of services and support from social services, but also sort of for children, it goes to their very identity. And I think when they're in a situation away from family, away from anything that they know, things like their name and age is sort of all they've got. And when they believe that they know their date of birth or they know their age and it's not believed, it can cause them a huge amount of stress. It can cause them a huge amount of upset. And linked to that is usually, as a child, that information's been passed to them by somebody they trust, usually a family member or a parent. So again, when someone's questioning that, for them it can be extremely distressful because it feels like an accusation against their family member about them being dishonest. So there's quite a lot of emotional issues that sort of linked to age disputes that can really impact on the young person's mental health, which is quite often overlooked within the process by the authorities currently. And then the sort of big reason why I guess age has become such an issue is that the Home Office are of the view that because there are benefits to children claiming asylum over adults claiming asylum, and how the asylum process plays out and the opportunities to maybe get granted leave or to get a positive outcome on their asylum, they are of the view that there is good reasons for people to lie and claim to be children when they're in fact adults. So that's the sort of approach, I guess, where they're coming from, in that they do feel that there are a high number of people who are giving false information. So when and how is age assessed? There's no test for it. It's all about judgment and opinion, very often about credibility. And the assessment process has been developed through a number of cases, a number of guidance that have been issued, and it's both Home Office and social services who are able to make decisions on age, which is quite an odd situation as well. And I thought that I'd sort of focus on children in hotels initially, because I'm aware this is a common issue that's being dealt with, and that's come about because there's been an increased use by the Home Office of accommodating adults in hotel type accommodation. That's being stretched. It sort of was slightly more isolated to London, and it sort of seemed to become more common during lockdown, but is now kind of seems to be branching further afield throughout the UK, particularly to areas where there potentially isn't the structures in place for support for refugees, for migrant children, and for organisations and charities and advocates who are live to the issue of age, know how to deal with it, and understand the process. So we are certainly seeing a huge increase in referrals that are coming through to us with that situation. But I think the fear is that that's just the tip of the iceberg. And in fact, there are probably a number of hotels where there are age disputed children, and they currently haven't maybe got a path through to Always Heard or to other amazing sort of advocacy service or refugee charities that can help signpost them and help them deal with the age issue. So it's a sort of quite a hot topic at the moment. I think there is quite a lot of concern around sort of what might be happening and that people don't know about. But what is amazing is that Always Heard exists and that you've already helped so many people, and that you've had such a great success rate as well. But I suspect that you may also continue to see an increase in the numbers. So kind of how do we end up in a hotel? So there's possibly like a couple of scenarios. So it can be that the Home Office, where they will have been placed in the hotel, right, and they're treating them as an adult, just simply aren't aware that they're a child. And that can occur for many reasons, potentially issues with interpreters, wrong questions being asked, the young person not being in a fit state to sort of fully understand what's happening, to give the right information. Or more commonly, their age is not believed by the Home Office, and a decision has been taken that their physical appearance and demeanour very strongly suggests that they're significantly over the age of 18. So in that scenario, no age assessment is completed. It's simply the views of an immigration officer, and that just needs to be a sort of a second pair of eyes, as they call it, needs to just confirm that they agree with that view, and then that's the decision taken, and that person will be treated as an adult. And usually then they will either remain in a hotel or will be placed in a hotel and continue to be supported by the Home Office. That young person will not be given any information about how to challenge or appeal that decision. They won't be referred by the Home Office to any resources, services or anything. They will very much just be placed there, probably informed that they need an immigration solicitor for their asylum claim, but often not even really given that advice. So which is again illustrates like how important a service like Always Heard is, and how the more that you guys are able to spread the word of your amazing service, the better it will be, because it's sort of being able to sort of cover such a wide area nationally, because the telephone-based support service you provide is quite remarkable and not something else that anyone else can really provide at the moment. And there's also a scenario to say as well that in some cases there can be people in that scenario where they've been with the local authority, had an age assessment, been found to be adults, and then returned to hotels, or they may have somehow come to the attention of the local authority first, been assessed as adults, and passed through to the Home Office to be in a hotel. But the vast majority is this sort of based on physical appearance only, and a decision being taken about age. When we see that, you tend to find that they're not being found to be sort of 18 or 19, it's more sort of 23, 24, 25, and that's just because the Home Office are aware that they're significantly over 18. They don't want to sort of leave themselves open for a challenge. They want to make sure, so they tend to go like 23 plus, because they think then that's a more solid decision. So you'll often see that young people are given ages around 23 to 25 in that scenario. The reality is that decision is made after a very short conversation with the young person, usually in quite a stressful situation, because they've very newly arrived in the UK, quite often after a very long and tiring and often traumatic journey. And they will just be issued with paperwork that says that sometimes the young person doesn't even really understand that decision has been made, or why it's been made, or what the documents say. If the Home Office feel that they have concerns about age, but don't feel they're significantly over 18, it's unclear, then they will refer them into the local authority for a full age assessment. So that's another scenario that can happen. And at that point, they should be removed from the hotel and go to the local authority pending the assessment. So I guess moving on to sort of what happens with the local authority when they become aware of a potential child in their area who's in need of care and support. It's sort of based on a referral that they receive, usually through advocacy or through some organisation that's supporting the young person. And there isn't a legal duty to do an age assessment. It's all sort of encompassed within the legal duties to assess whether there's a child in need that then is eligible for support and services. So part of that is deciding whether, firstly, they're a child. So that's where the age assessment sort of comes into play. We'd expect local authorities to be accommodating pending the outcome of assessments, but that in reality may not actually mean it stretches more than to a night, because they can be speedy when they want to be, but can also mean that they can be quite a lengthy process, and a young person can be accommodated for quite a long time with the local authority whilst waiting for an age decision. Neither of those scenarios are particularly great, because the young person's in a state of limbo if they're waiting for a long time. And if it's a short, sharp decision, then obviously that starts sort of the time ticking in terms of looking to challenge that decision, and accessing legal support, and sort of all the other sort of obstacles that sort of negative decisions then that comes with it. So I just wanted to quickly, without sort of going into too much detail, just explain that how local authorities do age assessments has now got quite a clear structure in terms of procedures and guidelines, and they're often referred to sort of the Merton principles, or a assessment being Merton compliant. And all that sort of means is that has the assessment followed the correct guidance and procedures for it to be lawful, and it's basically comes from a case law that involved Merton Council, which is why it's sort of got that name. There's quite a long list of things, but I just sort of thought the main ones might be helpful just to have a sort of understanding of sort of what age assessments, when they're taking place, sort of look like. So they're basically done through an interview process. There should be 2 suitably qualified and trained social workers, an interpreter present if the young person requires one, with making sure that's the correct dialect. And the decision shouldn't be based on appearance alone. That's sort of one of the key things that has come through, which is obviously why it's slightly at odds with the fact it can be on appearance alone when done by the Home Office and sort of saying that they're significantly over 18. And it should be a holistic process. So it needs to take into account all relevant factors, and the social workers should try and elicit as much information from the young person as possible and explore all supporting evidence before sort of reaching any decision. A key role, which again, I don't know that some of you may actually have experience in providing the role, is the appropriate adult. So that's an independent person who attends the age assessment meetings with the young person to support the young person. So they shouldn't be employees of the local authority, and they can be of the young person's choosing, though quite often, unfortunately, there isn't anybody who's able to fulfill that role for the young person that they know. So they are actually appointed by the local authority, usually contracted through a charity or other sort of arrangement. And then another thing is just to say that the young person, so that they are clear about why they've been assessed to be over 18, they should be informed of the reasons and given an opportunity to respond. And that's called a minded to process, which again, whilst very clearly required, that doesn't always happen. And then the young person should be provided with the written decision with the clear reasons. And another key one is the young person should be given the benefit of the doubt. So that's about the sort of the approach that should be taken. Shouldn't be doing the assessment to see whether the young person can prove that they're a child. That should be about thinking of giving them the benefit of the doubt, starting from a position of believing them, and only coming to another conclusion if it's clear and there's clear evidence and reasons to say that they're not. However, that is not something that we see a lot of, sadly. So since lockdown, it feels that the numbers have dramatically increased on the age assessment front. And I just wanted to flag, and I'm not going to go into much detail because it's not that sort of relevant, but that there has been a recent case at the High Court about processes that were taking place in Kent, where a Kent intake unit was set up, which was sort of for social workers to pretty much quickly churn out decisions on age, alongside Home Office officials. And basically they were very cursory, and it was going on for quite a long time. There were quite a lot of challenges in play, and the good news is the court found that any age assessment that started, so any kind of social worker involvement within the process where it's claiming to be an age assessment, has to comply with the Merton principles. It has to be lawful. They can't kind of just do what is sort of looked at as a shortened version, just to try and get to a quick decision. So that is been found to be unlawful, and I just wanted to flag that just in case any young people, you have to see any paperwork where it says Kent intake unit, that should hopefully mean the young person has quite a good chance of challenging the decision. So it was just something I thought might be helpful to look out for if you were looking at any age papers. Obviously, if the age is accepted, the young person then is supported and gets services under Section 20 as a looked after child. And then we'll get support post 18, either as a former relevant child or a qualifying child, depending on whether they've got their 13 weeks before their 18th birthday. So the outcomes are obviously huge. And there's obviously then a knock-on benefit to their asylum claim, depending at what point that's in by the time that the age has been determined. And then, like I had mentioned before, there can be children that are accepted as older rather than their claimed age. So again, those ones should still be looked at as possible challenges, even though they've been found to be children, because it's, again, goes to their part of their identity, but also is really crucial in terms of what support and services they can access, particularly in relation to education, particularly in relation to mental health, and also can go to accommodation and sort of support. I mean, that really should be based on need, but tends to be based on age. And then obviously those that have accepted, found to be adults after a local authority assessment, any services and support will stop and they will be referred to the Home Office. That's usually done pretty quickly, and that will usually be an adult hotel. They will then receive minimum amount of money, and that's it. There's no other support that's given. So challenging the decisions. Sorry, I don't know how I'm doing for time. I'm probably being a bit slow. I'll try and make it quick, but basically the way to challenge the age decisions, the sort of legal mechanism, is by way of a judicial review application. And there's a 3-month deadline to issue a judicial review from the date of the decision. But I just wanted to say that if that 3-month deadline has passed, when the young person comes to any of you guys, still look to get legal advice for them, because there are often reasons that it can be used to explain the delay, but also it generate new decisions by asking for reassessments and reviews. And quite often there's procedural problems, flaws with it, where they haven't followed the Merton principles, and they are the main grounds to challenge. But actually, to get a different outcome and not just a continual kind of cycle of reassessing, the young person needs to build a positive case on their age. So that's where evidence and support from professionals that they're working with, teachers, youth workers, any documents they have, any family and friends in the UK, any information on the social services file, any issues about their mental health, that will all go to trying to gather positive information in support of their age, in the hope that any new assessment will come through with a different outcome. Because the problem is, if it's just a procedural argument, then those procedural issues will be addressed, but the outcome may not change because the information will be the same. And I see that quite often with young people going through an age assessment process, having a reassessment, and maybe there hasn't been the work that's been needed to try and get that positive case for them, and then their expectations about what's going to happen are not in line with reality of, unfortunately, it's likely to lead to the same conclusion. And And then just super briefly to say that when age can't be agreed and you've sort of been through reassessment processes, then currently what would happen is that you'd be asking the court, as long as you had a strong enough case, and they would list a fact-finding hearing. It's usually over a few days. It's quite a brutal, in my view, a brutal process, involves cross-examination of the young person, basically trying to pick apart their credibility, and isn't a particularly easy thing to watch. And because the judges don't even have to accept claimed age or assessed age and can actually just give their own age, it's quite a lottery. So trying to avoid that for a young person, I think, is the best outcome, because there's no guarantee that it's going to get a positive outcome. And then, just to say that the whole process is going to be changing soon, because the plan is that they are going to be setting up a national age assessment board. The details are sort of still being kept, secret, basically, currently. There's lots of discussions, lots of forums, lots of kind of requests for input from the Home Office, but it's still very unclear kind of what that's going to look like. But when that does come into play, that currently looks like it will provide an entirely different way of appealing these age decisions, which I think, if there's enough legal representatives to then take on those cases, may not be a bad thing if it's a specially tailored tribunal process just for age. Then hopefully it should be a better process than the one we have, but it is the Home Office, so who knows. And then I just wanted to say that, just really reiterate how important sort of the frontline workers and the advocates are for this group, because we as solicitors have no way of reaching out to these young people. We are 100% reliant on others picking it up, identifying the issues and referring them in. So keep doing what you're doing, because it's like so needed, and the numbers are only going to rise.
Thank you, Keely, and thank you for rising from your sick bed to share that.
Okay, no worries.
Really, really helpful. We've not got time for questions, I'm afraid. But,
sorry.
No, that's okay. All right, we'll have a quick one. Rona, I see your hand up. I can't but help. Or was that a clap?
Sorry, that was a clap. That was a clap.
Great. Okay,
thank you. Thank you.
The key takeaways, I think, is that all these things are challenged, but so you should definitely, if you're working with a young person whose age has been disputed, that should not be left as a settled fact. It may be scope for challenge, and that you need to support that young person, let that young person know about access to legal support and help them to get it. So many thanks, Killian. I hope you recover well. The next speakers we've got are from the Young Citizens project, which is a project run by Coram. I'm delighted to be hearing. We'll be hearing shortly from Eamon and Mahmoud, who'll speak about the difference that having an advocate can make, and I think we'll share some insights into some of the additional challenges that young refugees and migrants face when they come to the UK. But first of all, what we want to do is play a short video that's been produced by the Young Citizens. One of a number they've produced for young people and those who work with them. And you should definitely check out those videos. They're really, really helpful. This film also features Jamila, another young citizen who sadly can't join us today. So Tommaso, if you can play the video, and then we'll hear from Eamon and Mood after that.
When my social worker helped me with money, I used to think it was from her own pocket.
I didn't know anything about my rights, and I thought my social worker will lose her job if I make a complaint.
Back home, the culture is different from here in UK. Young people over there think it's shameful to ask other people for help. I wasn't confident at all. I was waiting for my asylum, so I didn't want to complain.
Coram told me about my rights and said social worker money is money from the government and it is their job.
So now, if I need something, I ask for it.
I was owed money from my council. Before, I would have just accepted it. But now, I know that if it is written in my pathway plan, it's my right and I'm going to fight for it. I called Always Heard, who found me an advocate. They helped me to write a complaint and gave me the money I was owed.
I asked my social worker for help for gym membership, and she just told me, we don't have it here in our borough. I told her it would help to keep me busy with sleep and mental health. I didn't give up. I kept asking, and eventually they changed it for me and everyone in the borough.
So here's our top 3 tips.
Number 1, learn about your rights. Number 2, complaining doesn't affect your asylum. And number 3,
don't give up. Keep pushing. It's your right.
Great, thank you. So, Eamon and Mahmood, are you able to join us?
Hi, can you hear me, Andrew?
I can indeed, yes. Hi, Eamon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ayman. I came to the UK almost 5 years ago without my parents, and I used to live with my foster carer. I then claimed an asylum, and I got accepted within 1 year. I don't know if you guys saw the video. I think the video was a bit lagging, but I can relate to what was said on the video, because when I was new here in the UK and I couldn't speak English, and the social service, my social service were not treating me well. I needed an advocate. That I needed advocate the most. I found out about Coram Voice through Karas. I was one of the youth leader in Karas, and they had a workshop that they were running every one times a month. And luckily, the workshop, it was about people who are in care and people who are care leaver. So I was lucky enough to participate on that workshop, and I got to learn about advocates and how can, like, for example, if I'm not getting help from the social service, because at that time I was 16, that I can ask the advocate to help me with some of the stuff that I was going through. Before the workshop, I didn't know about what was my right. And after the workshop that I finished with Karas, I knew that I was entitled to an advocate. And I then straight away called Coram Voice, and luckily they did a small interview, and they accepted me within 3 days and got me an advocate. My advocate that I had from Coram Voice, she was very supportive, and I felt that I had a voice because she was listening to me the whole time and giving me advice. These are few of the things that my advocate that helped me in Coram Voice. She helped me speak to my social worker about my birthday money. I have been So when I came here first in the UK for the first 1 year and a half, I didn't get any birthday money or any celebration or aid money. So the advocate, every time that I ask my social worker to if they can support me with this, she would say that I was not entitled. But I had some family members from Sweden who were getting the same support, basically about support on birthday money and celebration money. So then when I told this to the applicant, the applicant spoke to the social service, and they started giving me money. After the applicant helped me write a complaint letter, and because they were not also responding. So when I got the applicant, they start listening to me uh, more often, and they start responding to my phone calls and texts more often also. Uh, why do I think having an advocate is important? I believe some social workers are good, and some social services they're not good. And if someone who is entitled to an advocate, if they can do an advocate, I think it's the best thing to do, because it makes it makes it easier to communicate with the social service. They will start listening to you, and they will start responding, and so they can help you. Yeah, for the next part, I'm gonna give it to Mahmoud to talk about. And if anyone have questions, please feel free to ask if there is a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayman. Hi, everyone. My name is Mahmoud. I don't know if you hear me properly or not, but I want to check.
We can hear you well.
Good. All right. My name is Mahmoud, and when I came to UK, I was 17. Now I'm 20. So with no family members, I came alone. So I put in foster family in that time. So like first time I had an advocate experience, it was in 2021, I think last year. So I had some problem with my personal advisor. My PA tried to move me from where I live, like with no good reason. He just tried to move me because he want to put someone in there. So I feel that not fair, it's not right. I feel from the first time, I feel like I need someone to help me. But like the videos Jamila and Ahmed said, I don't know their advocacy programs, there are people there to help you if you have some issues. So yes, I keep silent, but like that time I had really serious problems. So like he tried to move me and he lied, and he didn't tell me the reason why he want to move me. So that stressed me a lot, and I feel really down. So like I asked someone to help me in this issue, and because I don't want to move at the moment, I was in college, I had like some exams, and I'm not ready to move at that time. Like Jesse called me and moved today. So like, and that person give me advocacy contact. So I contact someone like, so like she talked to me directly. She called me back, and like we had like uh, she asked me about my situation, and I told her, we talk, and also like she give me confidence to talk about my situation, like with details, and like she give me power that like she just what you wanna do, what you wanna say, like she just asking me, and she telling me the right way. Also like we can do this, like can I call you first personal advisor, or that things like give me power and help me, like make me confident to speak my issues. And we wrote a complaint, and in a few days she called me back, you don't need to move, and your issue is solved, and your PA was lying there, right? So I was really happy. I was in stress, like serious one in that time, because I feel like someone, it's not right to move me, but like I don't know my right. That's why he tried to move me. So when I found someone like advocacy there to help you always, that make me feel really amazing, and I was happy that time. And that why advocate, I don't know the word advocacy, what it mean in that time, even in English, but like, and then I found out, likely I've been with young citizen, and then that helped me more to know about my right as well. So I've been around in college with friends. They have so many issues like this, so easily I can tell them their Coram Voice always there. If you have issue like this, they can help you. And like I see, like some of my friends, they call directly and they got translator and they help their issue. So like advocacy is really amazing thing for young people who they don't know their right, like me. So for me now, but out there a lot of young people or a lot of immigration background, they don't know they can like write a complaint like I did, or they can like their personal advisor can tell, like easily you can tell that is wrong, it's right, and someone can tell you what is right or what is wrong. I feel like that really amazing things. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mahmood and Ayman. I think that's really some insights in terms of what it's like not necessarily knowing what your rights you have, and also really highlighting how important it is to have access to advocacy. So yeah, come on, let's make sure that all advocacy services young people can speak to their advocates in a language that they understand, access to interpretation. And that's we could all be doing a lot better. So we need to be lobbying for that. We are running a little bit behind schedule, and I don't see any hands up. So I think what we'll do is many thanks to Mahmood and Ayman again, and then we'll move on to our final speaker from the panel today, and that's Emma Robinson, who's our Coram Voice specialist advocate for children and young people with disabilities. Some of you will have benefited from Emma's excellent training and consultation, and for those of you who have not, please do take a look at the Specialist Advocacy Service section of our website, and you can look at for training opportunities, or also to contact Coram Voice and get some specialist advice from Emma if you need that. So yeah, over to you, Emma.
Hi everyone. Yes, so I'm Emma. I'm the Specialist Advocate for Children and Young People with Disabilities at Coram Voice. And I've been asked to just speak to you very briefly today about disabled children and young people who are missing out on advocacy support. So I prepared a really short talk, and then hopefully there'll be a little bit of time for questions at the end, but I know time's really tight. So, I mean, we're all aware, or lots of us are aware, that there can be issues with young people with disabilities who have a statutory right to advocacy, so looked after children and care leavers. We're all aware, or lots of us are aware, that there can still be problems with advocacy services offering a fully accessible service to disabled children, particularly if they need non-instructed advocacy. So if they're unable to talk about their wishes and feelings, or unable to understand their rights. So some advocacy services don't feel able to offer that service. It might be because of a lack of confidence or training or experienced staff, or an inaccessible referral route. Coram Voice do provide non-instructed advocacy and advocacy to young people with all sorts of different disabilities. And I suppose, just as an aside, I just wanted to reiterate really what Andrew is saying, is that if you are an advocacy service or know of an advocacy service that is struggling to provide that kind of support, you can get in touch with me, you can get in touch through the specialist advice service page on our website, I do offer one-off free consultations with professionals. Can also offer some limited free places on training. And after the last Always Heard seminar, I did reach out to one London in-house advocacy service that was struggling to provide non-instructed advocacy and offered them some support. And since then, they've managed to put a really proactive service that does provide non-instructed advocacy and support to children with disabilities who are looked after or care leavers. However, that's not really what I wanted to talk to you about today. I wanted to talk to you about all of the disabled children and young people who would really benefit from advocacy support, who do have involvement with children's social care, but don't have a statutory right to advocacy in the first place. So they don't actually have any legal right because they're not looked after children or care leavers. So at the moment, looked after children and care leavers do have a right to advocacy, but lots of young people with disabilities are obviously not looked after. So just to give you an example, you might have a child with really complex or multiple disabilities that could include physical and learning disabilities, autism, communication impairments, but they could still live at home with their birth family with very limited short breaks or hours for direct payments, and they might attend a local specialist school as a day student. So where would that child's right to advocacy be? And unfortunately, the answer is they don't necessarily have one. So some councils with enough vision and enough funding do include that kind of support in advocacy contracts. So they do provide support for children who are not looked after but have disabilities to have advocates. But it's not a right. It really is discretionary at the moment in terms of the law. And so it's often missed out. And what we've effectively got is a bit of a postcode lottery for the children that aren't looked after but have disabilities. So I had a quick look through our own advocacy contracts in London and across the country and did a bit of an estimate. And I think that 40%, even among our own advocacy contracts, don't have a clear provision for advocacy for disabled children who are not looked after. These young people could still need considerable involvement from children's social care to thrive, but they just don't meet the threshold to be in care. And then when those children's rights are breached, particularly if they lack the capacity to understand their rights or to communicate their feelings, then they might be left without an independent advocate. So it's worth mentioning at this point that some people take the view that parents, teachers, support workers and other people in the child's life can take on the advocacy role. But I don't think that's realistic for other people to completely undertake that advocacy role. And just very briefly, the reasons are that an advocate is supposed to be purely the voice of the child's wishes and rights, so shouldn't be also caring for them and taking a best interest role. Also, an advocate should be a highly skilled professional who's able to navigate complex legal systems and rights and entitlements of social care. And we can't expect parents, carers and teachers to consistently be able to do that for children. That's not to say we shouldn't upskill everyone to understand disabled children's rights, but that's different to being a professional advocate. And then also, just in terms of parents, it can be exhausting to care for a child with a disability with very complex needs. You know, if you're providing round-the-clock care or supporting the child to stay out of harm's way, and a parent, for example, just might not have time to be an advocate. So I suppose at Coram Voice, for us, the dream is that every child with a disability should have that right to advocacy support if they're receiving a package of care from social care. And the question would be, what are we doing about this? So obviously, one of the things we want to do is just raise awareness. So that's why I'm here today. We're also fundraising so that we can provide projects and pilot projects to provide that support to show what a difference it makes in disabled children's lives. And we've got applications in process at the moment, but also we did manage to do a small pilot project for a handful of children where we did support children with advocacy who wouldn't normally have a statutory entitlement but have disabilities. And as part of that project, I worked personally with a disabled child with complex needs to raise issues with social care about his care package at home and the fact that the family's accommodation was unsuitable and actually unsafe to meet that child's needs. And as part of that, also supported the child and parent to access legal advice. The outcome being that ultimately the care package was increased and the family did move to more suitable accommodation. So I'm going to call that child David, not his real name, and I'm going to give the last word of my presentation to David's mother. I just want to read to you the feedback that she wrote to me once I'd ended my involvement with David. So what she said was, David has benefited from Coram Voice's service so much. Coram has helped David move into more suitable accommodation with a garden and secured hours for care and a break with disability social services. David and his family have been going back and forth with social services for years, trying to secure the correct support to help David thrive despite his complex needs. His case was only listened to and taken seriously once Emma from Coram Voice stepped in. A difference in the response from social services was automatically noticeable in the way that we were treated and the law was correctly applied. Coram Voice made sure that David was obtaining his rights as a disabled child and talked up for David, giving him a voice that could be heard and acted on. The family were treated with dignity that we really mattered in the hardest of times. This service is what is needed and should be available to every child with additional needs. Without Coram Voice, David would not be where he is today, living closer to family, on the list for a better special needs school, and receiving care break hours to suit his needs. The only way that Coram Voice can improve their services is to be given extra funding to make sure that they're available to more disabled children. We as a family feel truly blessed that we were able to access this service when we really, truly needed to. So yeah, I find that really moving. And if we've got time for questions, Andrew will have to let me know, but I'd be happy to answer anything if there is time.
Yeah, we've got a few moments if anyone has any questions about the work that Emma has been doing on this one.
Okay.
I see Leanne. Leanne Hughes.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't get myself off mute. It wasn't really a question, it was just to say that we work for Bernardo's and we have benefited from Emma's training. So we did some non-instructed advocacy training a little while ago, and it's made all of us advocates a lot more confident in doing that work. And I think we've definitely seen an increase in non-instructed advocacy referrals as a result of that. So yeah, we can definitely recommend Emma's training to kind of give us the confidence to carry out that work.
Thanks, Leanne.
It's okay.
I was just going to ask, sorry, can I just ask, will there be information about the training somewhere? Because we do offer non-instructed advocacy, but our worker who's doing it is really new to disabilities and she's learning so quickly and she's got the natural skills. But your training does sound amazing.
So yeah, there's information on the specialist advice service page on our website. I wonder if someone already posted a link.
It's been put on the chat. You'll see there's a link to the website. You can take a look there.
So you can get yourself on the waiting list for training. You can also, or your advocate can also book a half an hour one-off consultation with me if they're having any particular challenges.
That's what I was hoping you'd offer. Yeah. I'll get in touch with you.
No problem.
So many thanks to Emma. And yeah, this is a real area. It's clearly, as Leanne was saying, once you start doing this work, you get more referrals because people see that advocacy works. And I think it's a real, this is a group of young people who would really benefit from a more consistent and higher level of access to advocacy support.